Do you not find it alarming that you would get requests for large sums of money only to find out that legal hasn't read the entire contract, minister hasn't read the entire contract before it comes to you? Does that not alarm you as somebody who is, as part of the process flow, to either approve or not approve money before it goes out the door?
So I think...
Why is Treasury Board looking for approval to give a program $142 million more than last year when there is an audit pending for allegations of abuse within it?
Would you expect that lawyers would have combed through that humongous $15 billion contract with a fine-tooth comb to protect Canadian taxpayers before it came to you?
When 98% of executives receive bonuses within a department when they haven't even met half of their stated goals.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Mr. Matthews, since the minister didn't know, can you at least tell this committee what lapsed funding is?
I can tell you across the government last fiscal was around 8% lower than usual or previous years. I should mention for defense, they have special authorities around carrying forward money because of the complexity of their projects. And, you know, they only pay when they get the bills from the suppliers. So this bleeds into one of your previous questions about the money in supplementary estimates B. There's a mix in there of money that was in the previous year that has come forward again as unspent, and that's for River-class destroyers as well as F-35. There's also some new money for drones and some base infrastructure and some training and things like that. So it's a combination in there.
Can you clarify if any of that counts towards the $1.1 billion in new spending that the minister was talking about?
The 1.1 is what is in these estimates, and as I just mentioned, it is a mix of things that you may have seen or would have seen in previous year's estimates that was not spent. So it comes into this year's, but it has to be re-voted on by Parliament, so that's why it's there, as well as new money.
Okay, so it's not fully new money. It's some new money, but it's also some of the...
Right, and when you're voting money for projects like national defense, they're so big that when you do see some slippage, it will roll over from one year to the next, and they are very difficult projects at times to forecast the cash flow on. So you err on the side of caution because you're not allowed to overspend. So it's natural for defense to see this kind of movement.
With regards to Canada Post. Yeah, the $1 billion plus loan that was sent to them. I mean, there is a clause in the Canada Post Act that says repayment will be taken from annual revenue insofar as such revenue is sufficient. But, I mean, they posted another record loss. We're never getting that money back, are we?
So the loan is repayable until there's a decision taken that says it's not. It is repayable. And whether they will need additional funds, you know, they now have a labor agreement, as you mentioned, or was mentioned by the member, Mr. Chair. How they will rebound in terms of picking back up business that may have been lost during the rotating strikes, that will have a heavy influence in their cash flows going forward. So I'm sure they're keeping a close eye on that.
The section, I think it's section 31 of the Act, also allows the Minister of Finance, which by extension through the Treasury Board, to send money to Canada Post. Is there an outstanding request for more funding, bailout funding, for lack of a better term, for Canada Post?
Mr. Chair, there's nothing on my office in terms of a request for additional funding, but the normal flow would be Canada Post through the Minister of PSPC over to Finance. Once the Minister of Finance, or if the Minister of Finance is on side with additional funding, it would then come to Treasury Board Secretariat at that time.
Are you able to write a clause in there that would essentially override that section 32 to make sure that the taxpayer is made whole as a condition within a set period of time, or does that section 32 prohibit you from being able to make sure that taxpayers are made whole?
Mr. Chair, the specifics on that one, I say in general, you can't override legislation with policy or agreements. I don't know this act in detail, but that would be a decision for the Minister of Finance to take when deciding what conditions to put on any funding for Canada Post.
Okay. Yeah, there's reports that Canada Post has said it's going to need another loan. I think $500 million. So I guess keep your eyes open for that going forward. When it comes to contracts, I mean, you said earlier that you don't review all the contracts before money gets sent out. But do you not find it alarming that you would get requests for large sums of money only to find out that legal hasn't read the entire contract, minister hasn't read the entire contract before it comes to you? Does that not alarm you as somebody who is, as part of the process flow, to either approve or not approve money before it goes out the door?
So I think there are people who have read the contract. I guarantee you there are lawyers who have read the contract inside the Government of Canada, et cetera. I don't know the timing, and I can't recall the timing of the Stellantis contract in terms of the current minister and the current deputy. I'm not even sure if they were present at the time that it was signed. The role for Treasury Board Secretariat is around approving the terms and conditions, and as long as a program respects the terms and conditions that were set out and approved by the government, then it is off to the responsible minister and the department to fulfill those conditions.
Overall, how does the TPS ensure that our new spending not only meets immediate needs, but also positions Canada as a leader in attracting global investment? Like, what's some of the thought that's put into it? So
the flow, Mr. Chair, will be that when you see some new initiatives for investment approved in the budget, we're going to set aside tax measures, but new programs where there is actually dollars being spent. If they are new programs, they will come to Treasury Board Secretariat for approval. Those programs would include their objectives, how they plan to attain them, their performance measures, and a cash flow. And so Treasury Board Secretariat would be working with the responsible department to make sure that their performance measures and their approach meet the intent of the government.
I just want to drill down on one social policy matter. In my riding of Eglinton Lawrence, there are quite a few seniors who rely on the Canada Dental Care Plan. And just a few days ago, the Minister of Health announced that close to 6 million Canadians overall, or about 15% of the total population, use this plan. How will our new spending outlined outline, I thought I was getting heckled there. How will the new spending outline build and expand the Canada Dental Care Plan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is funding in these supplementary estimates B for the dental plan, and that is largely because the take-up on that plan has been greater than initially forecast, and so the take-up's been terrific. Maybe there was a backlog of people waiting for these types of services, and that's why you've seen this initial wave, but there's additional funds in there for the plan to make sure that those who are eligible can receive the services that they're entitled to.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go start at the top of the order again with Mrs. Block.
Looking at your website, it states that for the year 2024-25, the Government of Canada only met 53% of their department's mandated goals. What are the consequences, if any, when departments continue to fail or barely reach their goals? And this may follow up on Mr. Gasparo's questions. But when 53% of departments don't meet their, or when 47% of departments don't meet their mandated goals, what is the recourse of the Treasury Board Secretariat?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when we are establishing goals for departments, or when they are establishing them with our help, we do want stretch goals because you do want to aim high. That number is low. I'm not entirely sure exactly which figure the member is looking at, but I know two that are on TBS's departmental results report that are kind of jump off the page. High volume service. The system as a whole is down around 52%. And also the number of IT systems that we would view as being healthy. Again, we're in, I believe below 50%. And those are two numbers where you have to dig in and find out why. with the health of IT, it's a question of resourcing and prioritizing the spend in IT. On the high volume services, you can't really be generic about it. You have to look at each one and say, okay, what's going on there? Was their take up bigger than we expected? Were they unable to hire staff? What's the background on this? So it really is a case-by-case basis. To answer the question, what's the recourse? Treasury Board, with the Treasury Board Secretary, with the support or endorsement of Treasury Board, can put conditions around improvement on departments, or they could put additional reporting requirements on departments as a way to try and keep an eye on things. But it starts with, what's your plan to improve?
Ms. Block, before you can continue, can you move your mic up a tiny bit? Bit more?
There we go.
Bit more?
A little more.
There we go. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So the Department of Citizenship and Immigration failed to meet 55.6% of their departmental targets in 2024-25. Now they're requesting an additional $624 million in funding through the supplementary estimates. Why is the Government of Canada rewarding departments with more funding when they fail to meet more than half of their departmental targets?
Thank you, Chair. And again, you have to really look into the detail of which targets are not being met and why. In some cases, the answer to meeting more of the targets is indeed resources. So it's not really an effective punishment to hold back resources if you've got a department that is not, in general, meeting its goals. So you have to really understand what is the reason. And I think more detailed questions about which ones are being met and which ones are not are probably more appropriate for the department in question. But I would just reiterate that the instinct to withhold resources for those departments who are not maybe doing as well as we would like may not be the right instinct.
Well, one could make a number of guesses as to what is going on in the Department of Citizenship and Immigration in not meeting their departmental targets. I'll move on. Regarding the operating expenditures for the interim federal health program, less than a week ago, the Standing Committee for Health called for the Auditor General to investigate this program amidst rising concerns over the ballooning costs. This year, an additional $598 million in funding will be added to the program through these estimates. So why is Treasury Board looking for approval to give a program $142 million more than last year when there is an audit pending for allegations of abuse within it?
Certainly. So the request has been made for an audit, but obviously until there is an audit done and there's conclusions, they're not proven. The recipients of the funding in this envelope are entitled to it. There's a backlog of cases, and so there's other measures being looked at to possibly better control the growth in this area as well. And I've not spoken to the Auditor General about a planned audit yet.
Thanks very much. We'll go back to Mrs. Romanato, please.
So we made the decision to now do a fall budget so that it would allow provinces and territories, municipalities, and so on to be able to do their planning. As often they do their budgets in the spring, but they need to know what's coming down the pike, really. So I'd like to know if it would be possible to elaborate a little bit on what that impact is in terms of the expenditure cycle for Treasury Board Secretary, but also what that would mean in terms of any additional changes that need to happen, if you'd like to elaborate a little.
Certainly. So the two main benefits for tabling in the fall are the one the member just mentioned, Mr. Chair, around giving provinces and territories more clarity about the federal government's plans while they develop their own budgets. And I've already spoken to a few provincial colleagues who are quite pleased with that. The second one is parliamentarians have often expressed frustration about lack of alignment between the budget when it's in the spring and the main estimates typically tabled around the same time that reflects nothing of the budget. Tabling the budget in the fall has been done this year, and it will happen going forward, gives departments a chance to get budget measures into their main estimates, which Parliament will see in 2026 before April 1st, and allow better alignment there. Departments are going to have to work very hard to get their submissions for new funding into the main estimates, so that will be our job over the next few months with departments. And the other piece, we investments, but also reductions. So there's been some dialogue this morning or this afternoon around the CER and when will the details show up. The full details will be in the main estimates and the departmental plans that go with it when they are tabled in 2026. And the reductions we've been talking about, they don't actually take effect till April 1st. So that's where you will see the traditional parliamentary reporting with those details outside of PBO requests, et cetera, which has already been discussed.
Thank you. So, Mr. Matthews, since we were chatting earlier, I have a question for you specifically on the contract again, on the Stellantis contract. On Tuesday, the Department of Industry told us that no single lawyer reviewed the entire Stellantis contract. They specifically said, to my amazement, that legal isn't even present during negotiations. So they explained that only a few lawyers would have seen select parts of the contract. So if there's no single lawyer who's reviewed a contract of $15 billion, would it be responsible for the Minister of the Treasury Board to sign off on the spending?
So again, Mr. Chair, in terms of how the agreement and the deal was reached, I wasn't there. I can't really comment on that. I'll go back and listen to that testimony with great interest. Again, we are dealing with the parameters. So it's Cabinet makes decisions that establishes the parameters of a program or an initiative or a deal. And if the department's proposal to Treasury Board respects those parameters and respects Treasury Board policies, then the responsible minister is given the authority to go ahead.
Okay, so would you expect that lawyers would have combed through that humongous $15 billion contract with a fine-tooth comb to protect Canadian taxpayers before it came to you?
I would expect that the responsible departmental officials in Justice and ISED and maybe others would have reviewed all relevant material, and I will go back and listen to that testimony with interest.
Okay, so earlier Minister Ali said that there's mechanisms to deal with people violating TBS guidelines. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So Treasury Board policies and Treasury Board directives are mandatory, and there's a way for a department to seek an exemption if warranted, and Treasury Board can grant exemptions, or I can grant some. Where you've got departments who are not respecting Treasury Board policy, there are things Treasury Board can do. They could remove delegation for contracting authority or for HR authorities, et cetera. So it effectively would be, the most common one would be additional reporting or an improvement plan. If it's too severe, then you would actually see pulling back of contracting authority.
Okay, so would you consider not having at least one lawyer look through the entire contract? Like I say, I was absolutely stunned when they said they don't have legal during negotiations. And then on top of it to say, well, no one single lawyer actually sat through the entire, they were parsed out pieces of the contract. Like, would that have broken the rules? That seems to me like very unusual for a $15 billion contract.
So I can't speak to what happened in this case. The normal case when I was in line departments, when you're reviewing a major agreement or deal, is you would get legal advice as part of that, and they would sign off on this. I cannot speak to the detailed process that the department followed.
So you are saying it would be the norm that Treasury Board would expect that there would be proper lawyer oversight before it comes to you for signing?
There would, before a department reaches a deal, there would be legal risk analysis and a sign-off of some sort. You're not going to find that in a Treasury Board policy. That's just my own expectation, and it's my experience as well.
You know what? Honestly, I would expect that as just a regular Canadian taxpayer, that you would have proper legal oversight. So it just kind of blew my mind when they mentioned that.
Well, as I said, Mr. Chair, I will go back and read that testimony. So I'm
yeah. So that was Stephanie Tanton that said that. She was very clear at the Tuesday meeting. So. The job of the Treasury Board, you're there to ensure that things like there's provisions to protect the Canadian jobs in the agreement. Is that correct?
Again, it would be the parameters of if there's a program involved, which is a series of agreements, there would be parameters in the program that they would need to respect. My recollection of the Stellantis is that it's not a particular program, it's a one-off agreement. The parameters of that would have been approved by, not by like the broad parameters not approved by Treasury Board, they would have been negotiated by the department.
So you would have nothing to do of ensuring that there were job guarantees in that. Whose job would it be to ensure there were job guarantees in order for that? Because I know, like from what I understand, the Treasury Board is this that has to make sure spending is justified, risks are understood, the department has done its homework, and taxpayers are getting what they pay for. So whose job is it to make sure there are job guarantees or clawbacks if things don't happen, or like in the case of Stellantis, they leave?
So
Very brief answer, please.
Sure, certainly, Mr. Chair. The department would be responsible for making sure that they had enough protection to respect the government's decision in terms of whatever guarantees were established when it was approved.
Interested in knowing how AI is improving the services of the Treasury Board.
AI is one of the interesting pieces that we are looking at throughout government, and there's, every department is doing some mini experimentation with artificial intelligence. At TBS, it's very helpful for us in terms of, reviewing and processing. We have analysts experimenting with, using it to edit memos, etc. I think it's too early to say, point to me exactly what the productivity gains have been. If you talk to colleagues in the private sector, would tell you they're experiencing the exact same thing. We're all experimenting and all trying to figure out where the true production or productivity savings are. And so more to come on that in the future, I think.
Just to come back to briefly to a comment that was made by the minister, I'd like to understand just how involved you are, for example, in the purchase of fighter jets.
So it's national defense, Public Service Procurement Canada, and the new Defense Investment Agency, which is relatively new, who would be involved in that, along with partners from the Department of Industry, ISED. Treasury Board would have a role in terms of approvals for contracts, project authorities, getting regular status updates. So this project has been underway for a while. Where the department might be seeking additional money or a change in plans, they may have to come to Treasury Board, but Defence has pretty broad authorities with PSPC to manage on a day-to-day basis.
Mr. Matthews, according to the TBS website, GC Infobase, in 2024-25, Public Safety Canada set a total of 28 goals, and 14 of them are sitting at 0%. This is a department where 98% of the executives received bonuses in 23-24 when they met only 35.7% of their goals. The department is requesting an additional $43 million in supplementary spending in these estimates. And I guess my question for you is, given the Treasury Board sets the policy framework for how bonuses are awarded, what do you have to say when 98% of executives receive bonuses within a department when they haven't even met half of their stated goals?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, you would have to look at which goals are not being met and why. So if there are goals that are not being met because the required approvals weren't taken, et cetera, or something was delayed, you have to really dig in and determine what the cause is. In terms of those results and how we are monitoring at TBS, we are launching a new risk and compliance framework that will help us better assess how departments are doing in terms of where they're carrying risk, and some of those risks could be around delivery. In terms of, Treasury Board Secretariat involvement in the awarding of performance pay to executives, that is up to the department's deputy head to make those determinations in terms of whether their executives are meeting what was asked of them or not. And so we don't have line of sight into those decisions. That is a deputy head decision.
But the Treasury Board is responsible for setting the policy framework. When you see incidents like this, where a department is not meeting even half of the goals they set, regardless of what the excuses or reasons may be, has the Treasury Board had a conversation in regards to reforming how bonuses are rewarded?
So regarding performance pay and link to departments achieving their published targets or results, I have not had any of those conversations. I can tell you, in terms of the approach we take at TBS for our own employees, we are looking at whether the executives met the expectations in their own performance agreement. Some are tied to delivering on certain programs, and some are not. Some are more corporate related. So you really have to understand why the targets are not being met, and then the link to the executives before passing any judgment, I think, on whether there's a bigger problem.
Thank you very much, Chair. That is all that I have for today.